Hey everyone, it's Susan Pierce Thompson and welcome to the weekly vlog. Okay, there was a question posted in our Bright Lifers Facebook group a little while ago, and it was prefaced with #question. After the Food Revolution Summit finishes up, is it possible that the Bright Line Eating team could put together a side list of optional food choices for optimal health, including the maintenance of mental functioning with aging? I would love to take my Bright Line Eating lifestyle to the next step without having to become a nutritionist myself. I've learned a lot through the summit, and yet there is so much to sift through out there. For example, after yesterday's email from Susan, I'm kicking dairy down the road for some personal research of my own, asking with humble gratefulness for all that is already offered here. Carol Strongstone, Bright Lifer on maintenance. So first of all, Carol, thank you for your question and congratulations on living at maintenance with Bright Line Eating. That is phenomenal, and nobody does that by accident. Like that required you orchestrating diligent effort over days and months and probably years of just focusing on getting happy, thin, and free. And I'm so proud that you're doing with Bright Line Eating, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. So happy. And good for you for tuning in to the Food Revolution Summit. I really believe in the summit, and I take your question seriously because I share the desire to have someone sort of sort and vet and just please tell me what's true and what to do and what the sort of where's the big bang for the buck, right? Like, what should I really be focusing on for my health? And I have that same feeling, and I have people that I turn to for that. And my loving answer to your question is no. And I'm going to spend the rest of the vlog explaining why. It wouldn't actually be a good idea for us. It's not that I'm not willing, or that if I put a bunch of resources at it, I couldn't, do something like what you're asking. But in my very deepest considered opinion, it would be exceedingly unwise for me to do so for several reasons. First of all, it's not my area of expertise, nor is it the area of expertise of anyone here at Bright Line Eating. I've got 27 employees, and none of us, not a one, is an expert in nutrition, not even close. And it's funny, that might sound trivial, but that's an important point, right? So I was sitting at the table with Chris Davis, my chief of staff, yesterday, and she said, I'm really reading an interesting book. And I said, oh yeah, what's it about? And she said, it's called The Death of Expertise. The Death of Expertise. And I was like, so what's the argument? What's the thesis? And she said, well, the thesis is that in this modern age of the internet, and sort of the rising level of education of the populace, people don't really get anymore what it means to be an expert, like to study something academically and then spend 10, 20, 30, 40 years sort of practicing it and developing a history of seeing patterns and understanding how the big picture fits together with data that's coming in, afresh, from the trenches. And she said that, people with, a Google internet layperson's notion of, certain concepts challenge experts like, oh yeah, well, I read blah, blah, blah. And she said the book's argument is like, people have forgotten that there is such a thing as expertise, and that some people, by virtue of their education and then the decades that they spend after that immersed in a specific subject, know so much more than the rest of us could possibly know. So you wouldn't want me being your nutrition vetter. Like, that would be unwise. I've never studied it. I don't even play a nutritionist on TV. Like, seriously, I'm not a nutritionist. I never pretend to be one. I have opinions about food as they relate to the psychology and neuroscience of food addiction and weight loss. That's my area of expertise. So I say things about food, but not about nutrition. It's a totally different subject. So that's the first thing is, go to the experts for that. The second thing is, it would really take us off our focus here because nutrition is, that's a big field, right? And more is coming out all the time. So I want to tell you a little story. The very first 12-step food program was Overeaters Anonymous, and it was founded in January of 1960. And for a long stretch of time, like decades, Overeaters Anonymous put out food plans. And for a long time in the early days, there was this pamphlet that was called, I think it was called Dignity of Choice or something like that. And it offered like several different food plans that you could pick from. And what happened was, over the years, the World Service Business Conference, like the annual world, gathering of representatives from all the different OA groups around the world, was taken over more and more and more by nutritional arguments. Like some person from some group would make a motion like, I move that we add half a cup of wheat germ to the breakfast, to breakfast number 4 and food plan number 4. And then there would be like an hour discussion about the nutritional benefits of half a cup of wheat germ or whatever, right? You can picture how this annual conference, which was really supposed to be about how do we serve the struggling compulsive overeater better, it got taken over by arguments over nutrition. And so what they did one year was they invited 3 nutritionists to come in to just settle it once and for all, to just say, okay, here's the right way to eat. These food plans need to be adjusted in the following ways, and then you'll be covered. And what happened at that World Service Business Conference was that those 3 nutritionists couldn't agree. They started fighting with each other as everyone watched. And then one of them stormed out of the room and ended, basically stomped out. And at that meeting, the people in this organization realized there maybe is no such thing as the right way to eat or ideal nutrition, or in any case, we're not equipped to make recommendations in that vein. And from then on, they decided, we don't make recommendations about food plans. And they actually made a motion and they passed it. And I believe it's in effect to this day, although I don't know, but I believe it's in effect to this day. I learned all this in a book that I read about the history of Overeaters Anonymous because I was curious once. So what they did is they decided that it was against the rules in that organization for the organization as a whole to make recommendations about what people eat. So basically they said, if you have a problem with compulsive eating, we recommend that you abstain from the foods and eating behaviors that cause you difficulty. And they left it to everyone to figure out what their abstinence was. Now, I observe, because I know a lot of people who are in OA, that it doesn't work so well if people are, a lot of compulsive overeaters, whatever you want to call the terminology, what they have is food addiction. And that's semantics, it doesn't matter. But the point is that the saboteur, if you say, figure out what foods and eating behaviors cause you difficulty, almost always the saboteur will figure out a way to hold on to some sugar and flour. Like, oh yeah, we'll be eating chicken with barbecue sauce and yogurt with fruit on the bottom and, little ketchup here and, a little bit of whatever, Walden Farms dressing with the sorbitol in it. And, you'll be holding on to some sweet, some flour, some stuff with breading in it, it's okay, or whatever, right? We'll abstain from white flour, but not brown flour, whatever, right? The saboteur, and what I see in those meetings is that people, by and large, are not getting into a right-sized body. They're just not, on average. People go for decades and decades and decades and don't get into a right-sized body. So, I don't think it works to not tell people at all what to eat, but I think that the point is that the focus of the organization needs to be kept in mind. Here at Bright Line Eating, we're about helping people to get happy, thin, and free. That's our focus. That's our purpose. And if we stray from that purpose and try to put together some sort of document on here's optimal nutritional eating for brain health, for example, what we're going to be dealing with is people sending in, hey, haven't you read the recent study about this? And what about that? And the equivalent of I move that we add half a cup of wheat germ to the breakfast, right? And then we'll have to, and now here's the third point, which is that people don't agree. People don't agree on optimal nutrition. Even the experts don't agree. So me, as not an expert, how on earth am I going to do well in that fray. Like, I need to keep my eye on the ball, which is helping people get happy, thin, and free, which means protecting them from their saboteurs and giving them my expertise developed through, education and decades of work with now hundreds of thousands of people. I need to give them my expertise on what type of path is likely to work or not work for them based on the degree of food addiction they do or don't have and what their goals are. Like, that's my area of expertise. So if I start focusing on like trying to sort through the nutritional arguments, ooh, baby, I'm sunk. Like, those arguments are fierce. And what I've come to believe is that nutritional perfection isn't really a thing in the abstract for everyone. I think that there's principles that apply across the board, like reduce or eliminate processed foods, eat a ton of vegetables. Like, I think broad brushstrokes, those are some of the things that are true for everybody. But at the nitty gritty, when we talk about macronutrient composition, some people seem to do better with more fat, some people with less fat. There does seem to be some bio-individuality, and bio-individuality is a very, bio-individual nutrition is a very, very new field. Again, not my area of expertise. But I believe that nutritional health is an individual journey that people need to go on. Like, you need to see what works for your body, and that's a journey that I can't take for you. What I can do is tell you the information sources that I trust. And that's what I do each year when the Food Revolution Summit comes out. That's an information source that I trust. And in particular, the people on that summit that I trust are Michael Greger and David Katz. I think they're just the bee's knees. I also really, really listen to Ari Whitten. When Ari Whitten, because he doesn't cherry pick data. When Ari Whitten tells me that something is true or not true, he's someone that I trust. So, now he's my friend, so I'm able to email him and say, hey, what's true about blah, 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 and he'll email me back. But, for you could get on his email list and just pay attention. When Ari Whitten talks, I listen. Those are the three that I personally, and then John and Ocean Robbins. I think they do an amazing job of vetting their experts. I really do. Now, I know that your question was about, like, I just tuned into the Food Revolution Summit, or at least part of it, but there was so much, right? But there really were just key takeaways, right? Like, if you listen to Michael Greger's talk, he talked about, the 3 things you got to make sure you're eating a lot of, right? Greens, beans, and berries. Well, bright line eating, hello. Greens, beans, and berries. Not that complicated. So what I believe and what I've seen from watching people who come in often quite unhealthy into bright line eating, what I believe and what I've seen is that the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle, really applies here. You stop eating sugar and flour, and you start eating, lots of vegetables, and, some good servings of fruit in there, and some whole real food. And what happens is your body responds, and you start to get healthier. I don't personally see a lot of benefit in going beyond that. And that is some of how, like, not only am I not a nutritional expert, but I've actually been a little bit of a nutrition phobe, a little bit, because how do I put this? The time that it would take me to get my nutrition perfect in terms of just understanding the data and so forth, when I'm already doing everything I'm doing in that respect for my health, I'm not sure that it's worth it. And I think the fear that creeps in around, there's, whatever, anti-nutrients, and there's this and there's that, whatever. I eat my mushrooms, I eat my tomatoes, I eat my beans. I'm not worried about any of it. My body does tell me stuff. Like, my body tells me it likes soy. I think the snow job on soy has been ridiculous. I think the snow job on salt has been ridiculous. I mean, I do have some opinions, but I'm not an expert. And I am sorry that I'm not going to comply with your request, because I think it's a very, very sweet and well-intentioned request. And I understand, as a consumer of this kind of information, the desire to have someone trusted vet it. Ari Whitten's my guy for that. I go to him for all this stuff. And then John and Ocean Robbins with the Food Revolution Summit. I tune in and I absorb that stuff like a sponge. And then at the end of the day, I go back to my Bright Line Eating and I say, you know what? I'm doing right by my body when it comes to my food. So, Carol, I invite you to consider, for what purpose? Maximizing for what purpose? I mean, I get your desire to have a healthy brain late in life. Greens, beans, and berries, baby. Bright Line Eating, no sugar, no flour. Greens, beans, and berries. How much healthier can you get, right? Yeah. So, I think that it's important to remember that the effects of stress are profound. So if we're stressing ourselves about our nutrition to a certain point, that's going to be counterproductive. And, if you missed the Food Revolution Summit, if you're watching this, I'll just put a link down below. It's just incomparable. David Katz is on there talking, Michael Greger is on there talking, I'm on there talking. There's just a lot of good stuff in the Food Revolution Summit. I don't know that, one needs to go beyond tuning in every year to the Food Revolution Summit. Literally, Carol, if you just took time to listen to all those interviews and then just summarized the big takeaways, use the 80-20 principle. Don't get stuck in the details. Use the 80-20 principle and say, if I were going to change one or two or three things about my diet just to tweak, beyond what I do in Bright Line Eating, good enough. And then practice that until next year's summit comes around, anyway. Now I'm just talking as a friend, because the truth is this isn't my area of expertise. And I have long since given up thinking that I'm going to strive to be an expert in nutritional science. I think nutritional science is hard and hobbled just by the very nature of the fact that the subjects that we care about most, human beings, are really hard to study nutritionally. We're horrible rememberers of what we've eaten. Epidemiological stuff is really hard because there's all these confounds in the data. And you can only do a metabolic ward study for so long. That means locking someone on a hospital floor and knowing exactly what they're eating. So it's really hard to say, I see the kinds of health changes in people in Bright Line Eating that anyone would want to see, right? We know that people are getting healthy through doing Bright Line Eating. So my focus is on happy, thin, and free. I'll let the David Katz's and Michael Greger's focus on, and the Ari Whitten's and the John and Ocean Robbins's focus on the healthy. But I'm here to keep you happy, thin, and free. And I'm not going to extend my job beyond that because it just wouldn't be wise. Thank you for the question, though. I love you very much. And again, congratulations living at maintenance with Bright Line Eating. I'm so proud of you. All right, everyone. I'll see you next week.